architects, with Boris announcing build, 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 to me that means I can just start building. What does it actually imply?
I think the aspect is that he's trying to make an easement of capability of smaller projects to continue with build. There's still a procedure to follow, there's no doubt with that. Planning will never let you build without some form of consent, whether it be a prior notification, whether it be permitted development, or whether it be a full planning application. So I think it'd be good for Farooq to touch up on the aspects of policy, because that's what his expertise is in.
Yeah, so I mean the changes are quite far-reaching, really. I mean, we've always had, as Gulraiz has mentioned, if anybody wants to undertake development, there's always been a process to follow, to apply to the local council, for them to consider an application, and then for a decision to be made. But for many smaller projects, over the years, the government has tried to streamline, and the concept of permitted developments, where certain projects can actually be undertaken without the need to actually go to the council, mainly to do with domestic properties where people can extend at the rear.
So what's the difference between planning and building regs? Because I think this causes a bit of a confusion. I was at someone's house yesterday, and they were converting the garden shed.
Sure.
So I asked about planning. I said, "Is he planning?" He says, "No, we just needed building regs."
Okay.
So there's a bit of a confusion as to.
So there's different legislation, and probably the simplistic way to look at it is planning are concerned with the exterior of the building, how a building looks, the size of the building, whether it's going to affect the neighbours. They're not interested in what insulation you're using or how strong your foundations are. That's very much the nitty-gritty of the building regulation side. So for the vast majority of projects, building regulations will be needed. Okay, that's universal, and it's there to ensure that the whatever the construction is built so it doesn't fall down, and it's built so it's energy efficient and to fulfill the other requirements of building regulations. Planning, on the other hand, are more concerned with ensuring that the building looks nice. Okay, so it adds to the quality of an area. It doesn't affect any of the neighbours, and for many people it's seen as being a little bit of a hurdle as well, because some applications aren't successful. Okay, yes. You apply to the council and they may not share your views. So I think some of the recent changes that have been announced are trying to take some of these applications out of the planning system.
Okay.
Not entirely. I would call it streamline these types of applications, so that there is still an applications process to the council, but where the local authority can only take account of a very limited number of requirements, and thereby speeding the project up, and hence the build.
So to what extent have they given the landlords or property owners the freedom? What is the remit?
Okay, so if you have a existing house, there's always been this concept that you can extend it up to a certain extent, and you don't need to go to the local authority. So one of the kind of key changes the government is looking to introduce is to allow people to go up. Okay, so build an extra story on your house, or an extra 2 stories. So this is something which is completely new, has never been there previously. It's a very, very new announcement, but it's a potential game changer, because if you have a 2-story house, okay, these rules potentially allow you to add an extra floor.
Yeah.
And to create a separate flat.
Okay.
Okay. And as I say, previously that would have required a full planning application to the council.
Right.
And the council may have been reluctant to give that type of approval.
But will that still require building regs?
It will certainly require building regulations. Usually that's not necessarily been a barrier to developments, because people understand that if they're spending money on their property, they don't want it to fall down tomorrow. So provided the construction is done to certain standards, then building regulations has never been the barrier. Okay, It's just ensuring that whatever's constructed is constructed right. But coming back to the planning side, it's not going to be a free-for-all. We can't suddenly tomorrow get our overalls on and get building. There will still be a process to follow, but the process hopefully will be more streamlined.